Um, so our teacher, the perfectly enlightened Buddha, taught the various Dharma teachings. He taught the causal vehicle of characteristics and the resultant vehicle of the secret mantra. He taught the 84,000 Dharma teachings, many Dharma teachings with a vast intention, according to the various mental capacities and dispositions of those to be tamed, of sentient beings. So according to their very specific needs, the Buddha taught many different levels, or he turned the Dharma wheel in many different levels.
Tani Jatang Kishina Tupi Chi Jata Lapar Sanga Doji Tupi Chi Nyamsalayana. Tani Chukungidab that's Mungangidab Sinatrasha Yore Tani Tumungangidam Dawayana, any La Gombata, Diva, Nimbatra Siwayana, any Tsirmatang, Nemivatang, Jilong Jopam Jorzomba Sinatrashi, Shiji Yore, Tranoji, Yong Yunga Yore, Yanayan So de any Tachi. 도다 jetsin이 특파야나 단지윙 하지 특파야나 가른 냠스나와야나 조조데 따고 뉴무바케 님본로와치 따드드 지키무예 zongo 요레스 아치 트파야나 라 트파야나 하디와야나 따치 냠스나와 가르치와야나 따조조 무예데 네 코로 뉴무비 님본로와치 따이그 니sabjini 따 님본로와치 따드드 지 임바 하 고르지지 데페미시데 기치보레스.
And so when we practice the common vehicle of the Mahayana, or the common vehicles, or specifically the secret mantra vehicle, we speak about that there are two different siddhis, the common and supreme siddhis, that are to be attained. And for example, it is said that if one practices the deity and one recites the mantra, then as a result of such practice, one will achieve a long life and freedom from illness and wealth and possession and so forth. So this is how it is taught, and this also does come about. However, what's really most important is that to know that when we practice any practice of the sutras or the tantras, so whether it is the causal vehicle of characteristics or the resultant vehicle of the secret mantra, most importantly, we have to keep the aim in mind, that is that this practice must become an antidote to the afflictive emotions. So whatever Dharma one practices, whether one practices a deity, recites mantra and so forth, it's most important to understand that the practice is mainly for the sake of becoming an antidote to the afflictive emotions.
지 뉴무비 니볼은 로고 요레스나 지 산지 좀딘디 게 동하다 탐지 뉴몬이 중화 레레지세 요레스 이바인데 산에 땅킹가서 다 심지 스르지나 동하문도 같이 빠짝요레 근데 동하리 트라고야나 아뭐 리브 동하리 트라고야나 저 뉴모 바데 빵고 요완로 지탄듯지 동바양도 바주 산지 징진지 요레 이바인데 산에 콩기 송데 게 치지 봉고 제트지 동이나다 다 동하 치데다 탐지 뉴몬기 보다 디지네다 송 요레스
And so when the Buddha taught any Dharma, whether it is the sutras or the tantras, the Buddha saw that the purpose of these practices is that we have to train in order to eliminate the afflictive emotions. And the Buddha, a perfectly complete Buddha, had directly realized that all of our suffering arises from the afflictive emotions. And that is one thing all of us sentient beings share in common. We all do not want to experience suffering. So therefore, the Buddha taught that if one wants to become free from suffering, which is the result, one has to abandon the cause, which are the afflictive emotions. So this is what the perfectly complete Buddha had realized. And on the basis of this understanding, he taught the 84,000 Dharma teachings, or the sutras and the tantras, all as an antidote to the afflictive emotions.
땅기 뉴모바를 강다 예와 마보요레 덴다베기 뉴모바 데다 탐지 소수비 지레 요레 다 심지스데 지는 뉴모바 요레 근데 디 뉴모바 데 세지 요레베 메바 차지 요레베스나 아니 세지 요레스 저땅게 센지 모스남도 싱그란진데 다르캄 데버시비 모스남도 센지 란지 쭉 산지니 세겨와 다티 임바인디 자니 코 심지 모데 재미 마게 받는다 차도 요레스 네 lower ki nyum mo ba te da tham jin lower wa chi res te na nga so shi carbon ro chi yon ti ko ngo ran jin te shi carbon koron ro wa ti ko na bo cha do ya na e ko ma ro wa ma te cha te na te ji yor wa te na jin ko sin ji ngo ran jin te ne ko sar wa tang su ki san ji ga ran jin ra kam de bar shi bin bo te na cha ko yore ne nyum mo ba te da tham jin ti ngo lower sam chi te ma na ji cha ko yore ne te yin ba yin de ko ba yang ta ba su ki san ji ke pa sam ji chi si na mendo and no da nga ki chi sinam da da tam ji nyams lente and nyumo chuma da tam wa separate ne da tam ji chi bi kong na to par che te to ba san ji cha ta pa chi pung je te ji tum sinam do pa sam sinam do do da nga si am do da song di chi mu yen ro ji da de de chi cha bi yores.
So for the afflictive emotions, there are many different levels, there are many different kinds of afflictive emotions. But basically, afflictive emotions are something that all sentient beings possess in their minds. And so then, is it possible to eliminate them, to completely get rid of them? It is possible, because the true nature of the mind, our natural state, is Buddha nature. And that nature is that of a perfectly awakened Buddha. That is our true nature. And that nature is completely undefiled by any stains whatsoever. So since this is the natural state, the afflictive emotions are only a temporary defilement. For example, it is like a white crystal ball that this clear crystal mass is its essence, its nature. And so if it becomes defiled, then these are just temporary stains that can be polished, so you can just wash them off. But the true nature of that crystal will always remain as it is, and that is brilliant and crystal clear. And that's the nature of the mind. It is a crystal clear awakening which is our Buddha nature. And so all those afflictive emotions are only temporary defilements, or like these stains. And so therefore, if we engage in the practice of the Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings, whether we call it the sutras or the tantras or any vehicle, then we will eliminate as a result our afflictive emotions and attain the state of liberation and omniscience. And so that is the goal that we have in mind when we practice any of the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha Shakyamuni, such as the sutras and the tantras.
Andrew had to Saji, Joji, Namjorji, Namjolana may be jigs in the Jidit Mujo Paluni, Namjork Jig on the Poyano, Namjork Jitilayan, Dojire, Pemara, and Chire, Nobile, Sotar, Ray Mabuchi or Tinoni, Emirek Consumano. Emirek Chisi, Nancy, Lion, Tatilan, Lady Tortomi jigs in the Yoreta, Nancy, Lomanchum, the zone, the Pema shower and doors in the Tati, Jis and Dante, and then I'm your new Dojeki. In the book and Jinjolama, Tayano, that the
So today, according to our supplications, His Eminence Gachin Rinpoche will bestow the Parnashavari empowerment to us. And then there is sadhana, ritual text in relation to Parnashavari. And now, first of all, where does this belong to within the Buddha's teachings? So of the two vehicles, it belongs to the Mahayana vehicle, and that also is divided into two, which is the causal vehicle of characteristics and the resultant vehicle of the secret mantra. And of these two, it belongs to the resultant vehicle of the secret mantra. And within the secret mantra or the Vajrayana vehicle, there are four classes of Tantra, these are the action Tantra, performance Tantra, yoga Tantra, and the unsurpassed, the highest yoga Tantra. And of these four belongs to the yoga Tantra. And then there are different Buddha families that deities belong to, such as the Jewel family and the Lotus family and the Karma family and so on. And of these, it belongs to the Lotus family. And then within that, there are also many different, like divisions and activities that are being performed. And so this one practice of the Parnashavari is related to the Lotus Shavari Sutra.
Tini ta la gomba na di bakari chivayana ta hopon bias in the ditch sondu. La drabatan ha divata nimper draba suba la suba kangchi pa yana. Tedatum jiletini sanchok tedatumchi letini sanchok sin the company tedatum ji the TV tablana me pa os in the chin those.
So a master called Acharya Baya said that whatever you practice, whether you practice a deity or you recite a mantra, any practice that you do, these practices are all become an unsurpassed method to perfectly realize bodhicitta and emptiness.
Ni chopan jiktin sungong kechang la drabatan nga diwa kar chibaya na yang ni la te jan drab waya na sosok ji tapatan papra ta samning je te chamro te da tamji chai ji rang ji le yoga wate ane yobaya na ane la nga kar drabaya na drab li lawa tan dam na pintuk chiwa tan na jing gres ni tan dos.
Also, Lord Jigten Sungkyun had said, whatever deity you practice and whichever mantra you recite, in order to really accomplish accomplish the deity, what must arise is in the mind is in particular love and compassion. And so actually when you have that, then just naturally whatever deity you practice and mantra you recite, it will become an easy and of great benefit.
Ini tindi yinpa yindi tsani tata nga tso ke driptab kari yana ya driptab kanda chi tungwa yana ta kirin se driptab yana da jitsin trumi driptab yana da ini chi lomar lojuma tata pema shawarin de driptab yana da driptab tsangma kingola jamro da simchi teta tamji chakang duwa ota te pemisipi ki chenpo ro ta de chi chakpi yores de yinpa yindi tsani tsangma driptab tsangma kingola ini koro jamro simchi teta tamji inchi minchi ki chenpo chi yungdo goli jimsin teta chi res.
And so all the great masters of India and of Tibet, all the great beings and accomplished masters, all have said that whatever one practices, it must be preceded by the preliminary practice of taking refuge and cultivating the motivation of bodhicitta and the 6 paramitas, because they have said that if these do not arise genuinely, then it will be difficult to accomplish the deity genuinely. So these masters have said that again and again, and so therefore whatever we practice, whether it is Chinresik or Tara or now Parnashavari, in the beginning of every sadhana that we practice, it always begins with taking refuge and cultivating bodhicitta, because that is really of utmost importance in the very beginning.
Sipki chimbore da papar lama nga chirmo chinro kumdini tini jamro de simji ke domba le tawayina ne misili cheda demba da yang da ba da chak yores ni ta jamro da simji ke domba lember chepa la tambo jamro simji ke siya de kanri ba ha war chepa da ni da no jin ke de ar lang chawi jis ar song gu yo me nga garap or gu yo me de da tamji ha wa je ya de misili ke chimbores.
So therefore it is extremely important that in the beginning this vow of refuge and of bodhicitta really arises in our minds genuinely, and in particular if we are able to receive a refuge and the bodhisattva vow from His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche, then such a state of mind about and really becomes true and authentic. But so then before we take such a commitment, a vow, first of all, it's important that we understand what this vow of the refuge and of bodhicitta, what these actually are. And then also we need to know that after we have taken these vows, how are we to sustain them? How are we to guard those vows? So that's extremely important to understand. And so therefore, today, if we have sufficient time, then I'm also going to speak more about refuge, bodhicitta, the 6 paramita, and the 2 truths.
jamro la de chani chetang ke jamro yananda simji yananda parotsa ro yananda dembani yananda dembaji yananda de da tamji chi xingdong ce ge yaga nan xin chi kansa ji ge ji la chi nyamsi ne ge kansa ji ge ji la cha chang chang go yan ro da chang de wa ro da yores ne je ji ti nan ji yo yin de chani je ji jing de ne da ji ma shi chu gres nyamsi le india da no jin ling yores.
So whether it is the refuge or bodhicitta, the mind generation, or the 6 paramitas, or the 2 truths or 4 truths and so on, we should see them. They are just like the branches of one tree, and they must all be complete when we engage in practice, and they are interrelated. It's just like the branches of a tree; they are each connected to each other, and so in a similar way, also when we practice them, all of the practices are interconnected.
Ni 대인 바 인디 짜니다 담보 jamro siya de ni chitangke ngacho naba sanjibi chili shuke go na wa chile gorwa ta jongpe cha de da tamchi no jamro la de sane naba sanjibi chili shuke go na chile go yore kare chile go yore sina penam khangwa chi nang ro go wa yana go nang la yanji cha wa yana ene khampi na la la wa e nang shi jamro siya de so so ki la yana jini ta naba sanjibi chara na wa chi jamro ke yang ta pa jamro de simji ji le yang ta pa mini mewa yana ene kor naba sanjibi chedin chi plus race go yana ta kali khaw chak yor ba ti imba yin de chani na ko jamro sia namba sanji bi chi ju go na jamro ranji lo yona namba sanji pa imba ta jamro ti yang ta ba ji le me yana na ko namba sanji ba cha yan ro ti de ji yo ma re ta ti imba yin de cha ra re na ko jamro no de suwa na ji chi ko rang ji la yo go ti ma na yang sanji kun ju chi kun ju gending kun ju sum bol me che ti de ba yo ba me ba yo ba ga hang yo ba ta de ji cha na yang na yo ko yo res.
When we take the refuge vow, taking refuge, so in the scriptures, it is taught that taking refuge is the entrance door to the Buddha Dharma. And so why does it say that? It is just like when you're entering a house. So after you went through the door and you're inside, then, so basically you're an insider, you're inside the house. And so similarly, when you take refuge, then you become a Buddhist, which literally means like inside, when you're going inside. And likewise, if you have not cultivated the refuge in your mind, then it is difficult to really become a Buddhist. So it's really the taking of refuge which determines whether or not one actually becomes a Buddhist. And so then when we take refuge, and we seek refuge in the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel, and when we take refuge, having taken refuge in them, it is ideal if we then also cultivate real faith and devotion and joy in these jewels of refuge. So normally when I'm introduced to the taking of refuge, I explain that in 4 parts. So there's 4 parts to taking refuge, and that is the reason for taking refuge. And then secondly, the place, object of refuge. Then third, the way in which we take refuge. And fourth, the precepts or the training of taking refuge.
Japs ndroki bijimtsen kara resina ta ngacho ja sanji konju chi konju gending konju smbo tela ana ngacho japs ndroki bijimtsen ro te tin khamsam khoan de tongha ka ranjin yimba ji ha ko yore ha ko onde chane tongha la ta tanang je ko yore tongha la tanang je wa yana khamsam khoan de ranjin ni pa chi ko ke ta ta pa ta samji chi ko ba phap ko mara tongha te ta ta ko marwa de indi chani ana 접 강영 와지 쪼고 요로 당가 주 동하지 강아지 체인데 자네 거 라니 집니 리 동하 강아들 파 카피 짜와 강아들라 지토 미야나 접 젬바지 쪼고 요로 와티 난신지 ene 그런 갑성고비 동하들다 담들까 자네 접 강영 와지 쪼고 요래 접 요식 열때라 그런 니발라는 메바 용kin지 요고 그래 인디 자네 다 산지 치다 겐팅사 파판도 반남지 접스마 난신지는 konchok bodo le jab ni ba yo ba ha ko ndi chana ta te la e pa number ta ba ja ti ti ji sim dang wa te na jab sim ro ko bi jim chen dang wa ji to ti ne de ji yes.
So first, what is the reason for taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha jewels? So the reason is that, first of all, we understand that the nature of the three realms of samsara is suffering. And understanding that we develop fear of samsara, we want to liberate ourselves from samsara. But then wherever we are in samsara, we cannot find any real protection. So when we find ourselves in a place of great difficulties and hardships, we are unable to protect ourselves. We are unable to overcome it ourselves, to free ourselves. And therefore, we need a refuge that actually has the ability to liberate us from the three realms of samsara. And so that needs to be a kind of refuge that themselves have already attained complete transcendence of suffering. So we need an unsurpassed place of refuge. And so that is the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha jewels. So when we take refuge in them, we recognize that they have the power to really liberate us, to protect us. And so that is the reason, the main reason why we want to follow the three jewels or take refuge in the three jewels.
Ni japsin rosik yerte ta kanda de jiresiwana sanji chi dan gendeng se tabran boba namje jap sigyorwa ta te imba indi tsani ne sanji se ya de ta kanda de jiyoresina jamni ngaso sanji kun japsin rosik yer sanji kunju se la kai kanda de jiyoresina ane kan chen zang bo simji tsani de pe ze zang bo dani jin de song yin la tu ke dani tau jat shibzi chi de da tamji jata wa ta chen he ba chi bi shi yi shi den ba de ji la ne sanji se gres.
So then, secondly, what is the place or the object of refuge? So these are the three jewels of the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha, our unfailing, trustworthy places, sources of refuge, as it is said. So first of all, the Buddha. What is the Buddha jewel? Why is it a jewel? So the Buddha's form possesses the qualities of the 32 major and the 80 minor marks, and his speech possesses the 60 melodious sounds of Brahma, and his mind knows all knowable things just as they are. The mind is a mind of primordial wisdom. So that is the nature of the Buddha jewel.
Tani tendawe sanji te nga su kyab si pi jimtsin kanda yoresi na nga su kyab si pi jimtsin chibu ye yoresi tani jimtsin ye te kara resi na rang jikpa le zhuwa yin jikpa le zhuwi tablang kipa tukji chenpo nyereng sonong mga wa ten ta ma ta tamji ji tongze ba si na ta tanda da chi chenpo ye yoresi sanji la nga su kyab si pi jimtsin ta chi chenpo ye yoresi
Sumbodang Shibati Karare?
Puji chimbo nyereng mangawa. Nga chorong ki rupo resi anda, nga chorong ki daw resi anda, puji kongka kaula kanda da chi yo ma resi, simji tsangma zingang jikwa resi. Jiwa te, pinta mata tamji ji tongze pa, ta nga zo sosu jiwo mandawa ji na, ko ki nga li ji pinta song si te che, tala nga ka pa ji jigi yin se, ko nga li pinta ma song si ngi, 야미 요글라야지 요르와 다든지 요 말에서 산지다. 근데 핀다마다 탐지 승능 직과 그거니 동치백 그래서
So what is the reason now that we take refuge in the Buddha? There's 4 reasons. And number 1 is in order to free ourselves from fear. And then secondly, in order to have a method to free others from fear. Thirdly, it is because the Buddha himself has no bias and has no bias in his mind. That is, he doesn't perceive enemies and friends. Everyone is regarded as exactly equal, the same. And number 4 is that the Buddha benefits without any wish for reciprocation. No, there is no thinking, not in an ordinary way. Like we think that, so if I benefit someone, then they will do that in return and so on. So the Buddha benefits everyone equally.
Anything by in the Tambo, the Rangi Pale, Roa, Labiorwa, Rangi Pale, Roa, the Japsi, Jimsin Tambo, the Rangi Pale, Roas, the Sanita, Mato Tatan Jixi, Jet the car race, new movie about the ships about any race. And the Sanji Jom did the new move about the ships about Pakati, but some of Pangtani and Poppy Shizzy Yunti, the Latam Chapsan on the cheek race, the Indian Sanji Jom did the new Rangi Pale, Roa race.
So the first one is that so the Buddha is someone who has become himself completely liberated from all fear. And so what is really our the actual cause of our fear? It is the obscurations of the afflictive emotions and the subtle obscurations to omniscience. So the Buddha has completely abandoned all of these obscurations together with all of their karmic imprints. And the Buddha had actualized, therefore, all qualities of perfect realization. And so in this way, a Buddha is someone who is perfectly liberated from all fears.
Yang Rangi Pala Troa Yana Yin Pala to Tablaman Kiva Yana. Yang Yin Paropote that Tam Donghad Jatakumara, Donghad Japukumara, the Imba in the Obasanji Shakata, the Yin Donghad to be Tabla in Kibaris. Tablan keep it said the kind of race in a Omba Shari joke the becomes a conk get home, Onka Loma, Lampons in the Tiori, then Masipa Copatamuch. Ekonja Hamo, Kimoko Pati. And that Obasanji Shakatapaki, any demic cheese on the top, Mambuchi Gonilla cheese on the that you can one out. Ganonji keep them massive and Dochachimbo Gavos in the pen Dochachimbo, take Yanko, Omashakatapaki cheeky, number Mambuchis, top Mambuchi painting in the Koron, that you become one out. And the Shedanji and the somewhat too much in the pen massive Shedan shop chimbo race on the literature, the young Omashakatapaki cheese songi. The literature song in the Sunny and the Koron, they are trying to compare with the literature and Donna, Omashakatapani, it's come down Nipa, Salanyava last of a jetter, Yushin Samba, data, Chitemba, Deni Latini, and the Konchok, Yamlink, Nail Key, the Sunny, and literature to your race.
So even though the Buddha had become liberated himself from all fears, if he wouldn't be skilled in means to liberate others from their fears and suffering, then obviously he wouldn't be able to protect them from suffering. So the Buddha was also therefore someone who not only liberated himself from all fears, but he was very skilled in methods and skillful means. He was skilled in also liberating others from their fears, just according to their specific needs. So when the Buddha was alive, for example, he had different kinds of disciples. And for example, there was one Gelong, a monk, who was his disciple, who was completely stupid. Like he didn't understand anything. But then he faithfully followed the Buddha and he practiced the Dharma. And so the Buddha gave specific teachings for this kind of being. And that disciple became an arhat. And then there was another one who had more disposition, more a tendency toward attachment. And then the Buddha gave specific teachings for that. And then that one became an arhat. And then there was another one who had more of a tendency toward anger or hatred. That was Angulimala. And also he became a follower of the Buddha and attained arhatship in the end. So the Buddha, Shakyamuni, taught the Dharma precisely according to the very specific needs of the disciples. And then they practiced according to these specific instructions, and they attained the state of an arhat.
Nyereng mangasia de nga ki propores ya nda ngi dores ya ndo de de samu kin yo mares maybe jimchi pen raw chi jana ta kar resina tni omba shakya ta ba cho neran da gom jan jog de chan tni kap de ye ko mate da tan ma khashi la on shakya ta ba la ni ndan gom chi ba ji jog do sin ta ko sending ki so pa de da so yo res kap de chi de ti sending ki so pa so si de chan pen ma si chen tong ta gi jog tong ji ha le ya ji ba re yang chok jing ni nda chok jing ne ma ji ba khashi ji lap ji 는 머리다 손레다 송보레다 샤고레다 시 머리다 탐지 따리당 저때다 탐지 카운의 약동 행동때다 탐지 쪽바도서 카운의 역동때 지레스 레데야나야 산지 좀 된디 그 파울라 센딩 그 소파 송킨텔라 니비 삼바요 마레와 라타 따리 쪽바 동데 킨테다 탐지라 르미 삼바야 요 마레스 예지레 니 대강은 나지 다동양 벤총 지진신은 지 산지 좀 된디 라 빠르레샤 렌다소 된키 자소 된키 리징스미 지 요이 마레 리징스야 차지 산지 좀 된디 용 있다는 이 말에 산지 좀 된디 용 값스 근데 산지 좀 된디 메마르스 근데 메마르스네 좀 민지 요 메마르스 진짜지 안에 상 심지 손이 나대지 표를 삼 심지 손이 표디자네 산지 좀 된디 그 도지 리스나와 연상 네 간다 메마데다 담지 마지 비강아 개군지 요 말에 이지 더 지라다 리징 나와래 되지 나윤데 자네 되네 리징께 다 나마 산지 좀 된데 그 뉴지 지비값스 메말 같은 초송생 메발 되잖아요. 메발 산지 좀 된데 상 심지 손이 초송 나되잖아. 나라인 상 심지 손이 그 휴스 메마 상 심지 손이 그 휴나 사기인시 어떻게 되지 라면 말에 근데 라바 인디 짜니 네 메발 라되잖아. 다 초롱가 배사는 쉬그 말에 있으면 다 맞아 라되잖아. 많이 지지 는 메마 상 심지 손이 그 그런 그 사셔이 말에 사샤 임바 인디 짜니 드니 리진 소시지 워와다 이 임바 인디 짜니 페마테 다 시트 요 말이 마시 발티니 안 코르 네바차 네바차 파톤다 마지 다 셔 마시 그 강아치 근데 차도 요래 안 메바게 게 공지 지야메 바던데 차도 요래 피컵 리야 안 산지 좀 된디 탑 첸데 안 산지 좀 된디 니 스팝데 드니 리진 란데 수위 니 샤니 치피시 다진 젠다 나라타 젠다 좀게 다다 드로zo 띵게 리진이라 나기 체프까망아 니마티리 체프르 기사모티 맘뇽와 텔라 니파 요나 리진 다다니 넬라 타버 슈치 신 모나 탐디 자니 리진 라산 네텔타나 체 마조가레스 마셔버레스 템송티레스 템송 가르레스 산지 좀 딘지 포지지 뭐 니레인 뭔가비 좀 스페지레스
So then the third reason is that the Buddha is without any bias. His compassion is without any bias of closeness or distance. So the Buddha doesn't think in his mind that like, this is a friend or this is an enemy and so on. When the Buddha was alive and the Buddha Shakyamuni was alive, he was staying in a place to meditate, and so he was sitting there unmovingly meditating, and so some people were wondering, what is this? Is this a human being, or is this a ghost, or is this alive, or is he dead? And they would prick him with a thorn from a sandalwood, and they would bring their axes and their wooden bludgeons and so forth, and hit the Buddha with these. And however, the Buddha just remained completely equal without having any thought of closeness or distance, or considering them as their enemies and others as his friends, his close ones. And also the Buddha had one so-called enemy, or someone close to him, Devadatta. And so one time the Buddha was sick, and he had this like kind of wounds, and so there was this medicine for that, and so the doctor prescribed him a certain amount, I guess, of this medicine, like 32. Take 32 of this kind of medicine, and so that will certainly help. And so then the Buddha ate all of them, and he all of this medicine, and he was healed. And then after that, Devadatta himself also became sick with the same sickness. And now he remembered that this dosage of 32 was beneficial for the Buddha. So he told the physician, I also want 32 of that. And then the physician said that you shouldn't take that much, you're going to die. But Devadatta wouldn't listen, and he really wanted those 32, so he took them, he ate them. But of course, Devadatta was an ordinary person, and therefore way overdosed, and he became really sick. But then he was almost on the verge of death, and he didn't die. And so then, since he was kind of an adversary of the Buddha also knew that in his mind, and then the Buddha said that if in my heart there is no difference between enemies and friends, if everyone is completely equal, if this is truthful, then may Devadatta's sickness be completely healed. And so then instantly Devadatta was completely healed from his sickness, and he didn't die. So this was one kind of sign of the Buddha's unbiased compassion.
산지 좀 된데라 펜타마다 탐지 돈제 그래서 펜타마다 탐지 돈제 비tim생 가르레스는 공기 답자당 여자 디다 심지 디다 탐지다 네 조리렉 아드가는 톡고사 메인니다 제 밤조 디다 탐지다 또 삼고 공고 말이스 공기 톡디다 심지 탐지를 증난데 니마나 이기레스 인디자니니 공기 공라 핀데 나라 핀타 선생나리 example 야고 지성스네 가난다 되게 또 지성스네 동남 그 삼바요 말이스 남카노 니마 향한데 자네 니마 대다 담지라 그런 나초게 나초를 마 니마 오프인데 자네 오프레를 상만에 체버면도 와찬 대지 빠직정레스.
So then the Buddha force and benefits beings without any wish for reciprocation, thinking that the Buddha doesn't think that if I help this one, then I'm going to have a good reputation or more power, or I'm going to get some wealth and possessions. The Buddha doesn't think at all in this way. The Buddha is like a sun shining on all sentient beings, and without thinking that if I help this person, then he's going to like it, or if someone harms me, then I will not like it. If someone doesn't appreciate, I will not like it. The Buddha doesn't think in this way, but just like the sun shines upon us completely equally. So the sun touches us all without any difference. And so for these reasons, we take refuge in the Buddha Shakyamuni.
Golam sitting go city janita new mobata paka lekpi lami teta tamji chai tong ni peki chechi tenda yores 대 임바 인데 잔데 대 나초 오늘 돈에 냠니 고마데 치트 차고요레스 냠니 고마 치트 가르차르스 치트 될 때는 나초게 람스 터지는 냠스 나한테 잔에는 나초게 뉴모트 바데 치트 바데다 탐지 갈래 마 아지네 그런 바다 탐지 치트 고마야 tap고요 대 임바 인데 잔에 치트 yap니 바데 치공주데 데레스
So then we have, this is the reason why we take refuge in the Buddha. And then secondly, we take refuge in the Dharma. And so the Dharma is that which the Buddha had seen, the perfectly complete Buddha had seen exactly how sentient beings must be tamed. And so on the basis of that, he gave Dharma teachings. And the Dharma teachings consist of, in particular, the truth of cessation and the truth of the path. And so cessation is that it is possible to completely eliminate all afflictive emotions. And that is if one follows the authentic path, the excellent path that the Buddha had laid out. So the Dharma jewel is our actual source of refuge. So if we follow the path of the Dharma and we practice it properly, then gradually we will purify all obscurations of the afflictive emotions and the subtle obscurations to omniscience, and we attain the state of liberation. So that's the second jewel, the source of refuge, which is the Dharma jewel.
And ginting control lab this anitini, Rodney that the embassy or what Kumbayan Tabazu Sanji, Chisong, Song Yabichi, that Yang Lante, Topa Yang Tabajili, and Fiji, La Ginting control cigarette. Then I will tell her not to pick up Stimbayana, and not to la Chip Papa Tamji will lump to packet ropes at the pattern that it is.
And then there is the Sangha jewel, which is someone who themselves have attained liberations and has perfectly gained perfect realization, and so it is someone who has entered practiced the Buddha Dharma and then attained perfect realization. And then if we take also refuge in that Sangha jewel, then we ourselves will attain such a state of liberation and omniscience. So these in brief are our places of refuge. And so since we are Buddhist practitioners, it is really indispensable for us to understand. We must understand the three jewels, and therefore found it was very important to recognize that.
딱잡승도 차르스야 간다레시나더니 다 삽지텔라 치치데 상묘로 쪼쪼 똥바 산지 샥야 타파데기 용데 똥바 산지 샥야 타 다 산지 군조 치군조 겐딩 군조 삼지 용데 시비고니 이엘라 망아비 용데 시비고니 코나마키 떠성 포데다 담지 용데 시비고니 당 잡승도 와당 근데 체버 시비고니 잡승도 와는 얘네 똥바 샥야 타파데 데스무치 데 디스 쇼비 겐딩 데다 담지 빠사티 이 메버 시비통니 네 잡스도 와다 근데 지게 하고 요레스.
And then the third point is the way in which we take refuge, and so that has also three parts to it. And so most importantly, we take refuge on the basis of knowing the qualities of the Buddha Dharma and the Sangha, and then also knowing that there is no one that possesses greater qualities of body, speech, and mind. And then also we take refuge on the basis of knowing like the like their particular like particularities or particular attributes, and so that is we follow a particular sangha, recognizing that there is no higher, no greater source of or kind of way of following.
네, 따뜻가 농지 똥바샤 밭에다 담지 짬니 양다바 키랑 세비 지스 네 짬로 짬니 지요 바 키멜레파 따뜻데지 아레다.
So then, once one has accepted that the perfectly complete Buddha Shakyamuni is the authentic, true source of refuge, then one would not take on any other place of refuge.
드네 짬로 랍자테 땅아서 남자 진딩케 산지를 잡 송아야나 네 인직딘 빌파나 참은 저서야 지요레다 산지를 잡 송아야나 산지 좀 된데를 잡 송아 지스 요바다 데키 라바야나 애니 코랑 직 데리 요바라다 러다 노진다 단직딘 캄나 직 mambochi yorwa da tamjila ta chaps tin ninga yo mare da tamjila timba yana ni chi kuso tapa tamji chi kompang ko tipi ni ba yo mare te yimba indi chani ta sanjili chaps so yana ne la dan de da mambo yorwa hing ta chek la mek la na ka ta sian ro ta mambo yor ta tara chida me de ma tum hama ti sola ta de chi ke jape mambo yorwa ti indi chani da tamjila chaps ro ti ne pangu yores angzinata ko ning ta pa ni chi chaps ro ta na chi do chu shi se ya chi yorwa ta de chi chi ya ro me pare.
So, and then for the precepts of having taken refuge, in a general sense, once one has taken refuge in the Buddha, one does not take refuge in any other worldly god. For example, such as any kind of powerful worldly god, or a naga or a yaksha. There's all kinds of different kind of spirit beings in this world. So it is said that one should not take refuge in them because they do not have the power to establish us in the state of liberation. So there's all kinds of different beings, especially in the old days that were mentioned, like gods and different spirit beings that inhabit like trees and water and the fire and so forth. There's all kinds of different spirit beings. So abandoning taking refuge in them really means that really from the bottom of our heart, we shouldn't feel that I completely surrender all my unhappiness and suffering to you. So this is what one should not do once one has taken refuge in the Buddha.
가르치는 거 요 말에서는 다 심진 대다 탐지 참만은 세와 지야도 빼면서 봐 자임거리시 멋지고 말에서 심진 참말이다 심진 삼아서 보나 정도 세와 지야 논세 지야도 같이 나빵 타고 요레스.
And then next, having taken refuge in the Dharma, one must give up harming any sentient being. And so that's important. You have to completely refrain from any kind of violence or any kind of harm towards sentient beings. And we're not just talking about human beings, but all and any sentient being. And then once we have taken refuge in the Sangha, it is that one should not follow like a Tirthika, which is basically someone holding like certain non-Buddhist views. For example, it is that then someone is like humiliating or like slandering one's guru, or is holding all sorts of corrupted, mistaken views, such as claiming that there is no karma, cause and effect, and there are no past and future lives, and there is no benefit to practicing virtue, and there is no harm in practicing non-virtue, and so forth. So these kind of individuals, it is better if we do not put our trust in them and follow their influence.
산지 건조, 치 건조, 겐딩 건조 산에 캡슨 로 차비 지스. 드니 빨랑 대다 탐지 다다 난시 시바 난시 지와 다 대점도 마즈 드니 디스. 나 산지 캡스죠, 치 캡스죠, 겐딩 캡스죠, 점니 다바 건조 산 캡스죠 스네 대 양의 양의 노야다. 나 건조 삼지 까딩 제바 건조 삼지 용딩 젠데 디다 디스 찬 좀버 몰람 손답 대다 탐지 진지 메바다 지고레스. 이고레스.
And it is said that once one has taken then refuge in the Buddha jewel, Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel, so then one should practice these precepts as just mentioned. And also it is said that one should continuously again and again recite the refuge prayer. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. So again and again recite this prayer, and we should remember the qualities of the three jewels and continuously pray and supplicate to the three jewels.
문에 돈에 그 짬로 양 다바지 소소그 지라 얘나 체로지 간다레스는다 지난라 바운한라 간다듯이 되다는 초마도 나 lokisa 이기사 개군지 매선 타 초비근의 센 시에타고 되는 든든지게 lok야다 짬로 캡슨로 위키 탑 약시지다 캡슨로 차이 약시지다 든든지와
and a measure of truly having taken refuge in those places of refuge is that when you feel there is no one that I put my complete trust in aside from you, whether I'm happy or whether I'm sad, it is all you. So you have this complete resolution in your mind. So when you're that resolute in your mind, that's actually the best measure for having taken refuge. So as for the benefits of having taken refuge, once you have taken refuge, if you have this refuge vow becomes the foundation of any other Buddhist vow that follows. And then also whatever practice you engage in, whether you visualize a deity or you recite a mantra, you practice a deity, once you have taken the refuge vow, you actually come very close to accomplishing the deity, and also it becomes rather easy. So basically, having taken the refuge vow becomes really the foundation of any virtuous activity, any practice.
네 점로 동바다 소소 지라 말레머 제발 렌사기 라마 체다 덴바데다 탐지 라마 체딘 좀도 그 지리 용기 데다 탐지 데니 점로 데다 탐지 말라와이나 미시버스 납 침보 팽토보 요레스.
And if you're able to take such a refuge vow from a truly authentic guru, then the blessings will be immense and the benefits will be tremendous.
kasi alama de de lensa marina ta de vitona de ko tin cheper chite da tam jin de kun chosa ya gom chi na cha rogi se ne tam ja tam landor tam ja de se jin de yuya de da tam jam ro le dang ji res.
And if you happen to not be in the presence of such an authentic guru, then you can also take the refuge vow in the presence of a representation of the three jewels and just think, I'm taking refuge in the three jewels and I'm going to keep those precepts, those vows of what should be done and what should be given up.
네 다대 잡슨로 잠로시야 남자로 디바참 지시는 되는 지레스.
So this is a very brief discourse on taking refuge.
근데 가시지 그 잠로게 남자다 잠로게 대다 탐지 양다바 지를 용케 된다 요제레 대다 탐지라 가보지를 낸텐다 하나 하퍼 마신기 대다 탐지다 하마온기 대다 탐지라 미퍼때 지 마음보거 지기 인심이 된다지.
And so then we also should have the intention thinking that now that we know about the refuge, we have learned about the refuge, I'm going to practice this authentically and with great delight and enthusiasm. And also I'm going to encourage those who do not know about this. And the second point, the next we speak about the mind generation.
이주바메나 산지들밖에 탑잡아 시기 요러와 이바인데 잔데단데 페미시바 이 침보로지 저기 요레시스타 같은 건터 나초 산지 샤캬 비치고로 교디 산지지 공파 마타 바들라 메나 브롱피케 지 냠리지 캬그 요레스.
So the mind generation of bodhicitta is indispensable for us to attain the state of Buddhahood. It is virtuous in the beginning, in the middle, and until the very end. So it is the unsurpassed method to attain the state of Buddhahood. Therefore, it is of utmost importance. So it is something that is completely indispensable in our Dharma practice until the time we achieve the state of complete enlightenment.
Tani ite ba yede tsani sanjok semsia da soso ki jila malong bi ngoni ana chang lo jang go ya da pe ki chimbo cha yo res lo jang tang ting na so ta ta cheme je lo jang thawa ya na tani pe pe si bi ya bo yo res namja jinding na so pa so di tsani ta tan di chowa kara twa ya na cheme je jam ro te ta ba non de yo wa 이 마인디 tsani soso ki jila sanjok sim ma je bi ngoni malang bi ngoni cheme je lo ma jang wa ya na sanjok sim tembo ji tani yung yo ma yung me ya indi tsani.
And so before bodhicitta has arisen in our mind stream, it's important that we train our mind. And that begins with cultivating the four immeasurables. So normally when we do a practice together, puja together, any kind of sadhana we practice together, we always recite those lines about the four immeasurables. And that has to arise before bodhicitta can arise. If the four immeasurables do not arise in the beginning, then one's bodhicitta also will not become stable. So therefore it's very important that we begin with the four immeasurables.
잠바 재미 니기 재미가와 재미 땅형 재미시 땅형 대와 타마타마나 누거와 yana yang ta musi nyamsling di chani chi nyamni che di chani ambo de tangyong de roa yana tini pe misi de wo yores ni te ba indi chani tangyong ko de tambo ma shi gi si tangyong ning go to.
So the general order of the four immeasurables is there's immeasurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So equanimity is the last, but when we actually engage in practice, it is actually more simple to begin with the immeasurable equanimity first. So that's why I'm going to first begin with the immeasurable equanimity.
땅형시나 가라레시나 드라라 해당다 니나 차귀 로메와 심지대다 탐지 참아 찍과 직경 기타제 되라 나 땅형시 요레스 에나 방송 중재 다고 세요로 방송 중재를 때잖아 방송 시대잖아 다 아마 야 기롱수 따듯이나 다 또모 침보지 야기 여러분 또모도 야비값 항반은 너나 또모 약사도 막 간다지 나오노 토롱 속고 연한다 빵고 연한다 간다지 뭐딱 간다지 나봐야는 뭐 참마다 따당지 빠지 그 여러분 뭐 그런 데라 저 야로 저 도로스네 체프강지요 말 상마지 빠지 경지는 담만지 동부요 데라 강송 동계스 그래 재미 당용 재미있을 때 들으지 보고 여러서 여러 가지 상관없다 근데 심지 탐지라 안등이 다르세 안등이 니르세 마이 바 하나 그런 지 당용 지는 상무 동야때 하나 그런 당용 재미있을 요
And so, if this mind of immeasurable equanimity has not arisen first in the mind, then it's quite difficult to cultivate a true compassion. So this is why in the beginning it's important to first cultivate this sense of complete equanimity, that is without having any feelings of anger or kind of resentment toward enemies or attachment toward friends and near ones, but to see all sentient beings as completely equal. So in the old days of India, there was this class of the truthful regime who basically would be so truthful that they would see everyone as completely equally. Anyone, whether it's a rich person or a poor person begging for alms, or male or female, there is no better or worse in their mind. They would regard them all as completely the same, completely equally. And so just like that, this kind of a sense of equanimity should first arise. That is without any bias towards enemies or adversaries and friends. So when there is no bias whatsoever, then that is immeasurable equanimity.
네 심진 담지라 당용 그거 들은 게 지레 야고 지지 차와야나 근데 삼바심이 유니 공아야나 공 요래 인바인데 짜니 근데 안보 심진 창마라 당용 지로 지란 게 지레 지 차비 지데는 삼바심이 대다 담지 공아를 리사고 자기 요래스.
So when once immeasurable equanimity for all sentient beings has arisen within your mind stream, then once that is present in your mind, then it becomes actually quite easy to cultivate immeasurable love for all sentient beings.
네 삼바심이 랍디자네더니 제당 심지 대다 담지 쳔다다 치마 대와다 기바 유위체 랑 랭아 익삼 개편지 또 공부 제야 되라 는 삼바심에스 내가 마이 팔라 삼중 지와난신 다 마게 팔라 삼중 제대잖아 버티 페미시비 기포지 야포지 대와 가오지 유위체의 소속 탑지 요가 자록 지그레바 대단 대라오지 삼바심에스 대단은 냠슬렌다나 삼바심에스 대단에 드르지 고요레스.
And so then we cultivate immeasurable love, and that is to think that with my body, speech, and mind, I'm going to benefit, to bring happiness to all sentient beings in this and all future lives. So that is true, authentic love. For example, it's like the love that a mother has for her child. So because she loves her child, she would do anything to make her child be well and happy. So this is the kind of immeasurable love that we have to cultivate.
드니 니바 닝기 체메시 되잖아 간르기 고고 요레스나 아니 동화 잡고 끝나비 심지 제일 먹방 홍도 주니 근데 대 동화를 자나 야고 윤도 노후선데 대 동화를 잡을 슈 상반은 이나다 대 동화 잡이 털은 매바야나다 가르치 바야나야 아니 된로 찍라 닝기 체메시 요레스.
And then next we cultivate immeasurable compassion. So that to cultivate immeasurable compassion, we bring to mind the intense suffering that torments all sentient beings. And then a wish arises. May all these sentient beings be free from suffering. I want to liberate all of these sentient beings from suffering. So that is immeasurable compassion.
tani ta sampa gawa chime lugwa gawa chime labdi chan ne tani simjin kayang ruwa kansa kayang ruwa ti da ani je chimbo ta no lom jo posam chokwan rawa ki ponte tela thado dan resi me pa cham da ma je tela gawi ji si yara den rawa simjin chamala den ji yong shu nyam de bit lo samji la ani gawa chime lugwa yorwa.
And then there's immeasurable joy. And that is, for example, when you see someone, any sentient being or a person, someone who experiences a perfect, possesses perfect wealth, possession, and so on, instead of being jealous and competitive with them, you would feel joy, you would rejoice and think, may all sentient beings experience such abundance.
네 대로 그 체메지에 대 소속의 지라 양리 양의 공고를 기당계 공리 라원로지 요래 페미스 피운 침보에 요와르와다 인디자네 페나 체메 랍디자네다 심지 체다 파메바지를 먹방 봉도 송알에 때네 대로 공바다 근데 소속의 지를 체메비게 개와지 부바 좀 체네 때네 에 체메지라고 요르와 이 바인디자네다 될 공리 라워 요르와 라노지 게 개와야다 야 치보 요와 인디자네 때네 대다 담지 담비 치 가디에나 다 양내 양도 공고 맞지 다 들다 지레스.
So then later when we have cultivated again and again those four immeasurables, it becomes any Dharma practice then becomes quite easy and of great benefit. And so we give it this term immeasurable because sentient beings are immeasurable, limitless. And therefore we engage in limitless, measureless virtue, which then is why we call these like immeasurables. So once the mind becomes like limitless like that, actually the practice becomes quite easy and the virtue becomes really vast. So but whichever Dharma we practice, this is what we have to cultivate again and again.
tene tseme je te da tam ji yang ni yang de gong cha bi ji se a ga de go yo re se ne tene ne to ne ka sa chok sem se ya de nyam se ne go yo re se te rang ge ji le ke wer ke thap chi je go yo re se.
And so then once again and again you have cultivated, habituated to the four immeasurables, then you have to practice to cultivate the actual bodhicitta. So then you need to apply methods to actually give rise to bodhicitta.
네 나다 나초 산촉 셈세 대야테 간다데 지고 요레스나 따뜻한 산촉 셈세야 달에 용노니 실생모도 제네 셈지 반에 진동사 야다 두 산진도 세와나지 지디자네다 셈지 데라 서니다 데바 체친이다 데바지 데레데 지고 도스 서니다 체친이다 가르레데 신은 닝게 그 진동로 먹바스 닝게 쳔보 그 근데 라데 예 셈지 그 동로 먹바다 시럽 침보 그 근데 랑데 안에 그 남친 두 산지 지 공방 먹바니다 데바지 데레데 지벨라 안에 드니 산juk 셈 세그레스.
And so then how do we recognize, so kind of identify bodhicitta? So according to the scriptures, in one scripture called the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, it says that basically there are two qualities that a bodhicitta must possess, and that is compassion that perceives things of all sentient beings, and secondly is the complete, perfect wisdom. So having those two in mind, complete wisdom and all sentient beings held with compassion, that together is what kind of defines bodhicitta.
이렇게 샘지 대라 로답 지청 그거는 얘다 로답 right now some you can do sipena lot of 중총직 치보직 중보직 then was set지 마다와 lot of cheaper 마다와 some yores.
And so in terms of cultivating bodhicitta then there are three levels depending on three kinds of mental capacities. So that is there is a higher, a middling, and a lower mental capacity.
네, 심지 담보도 가르레스나 토머를 라니 산지지 콤팍타파라 지니 지니 심지 대다 담지 다 산지지 콤팍 고버자 비쌈노 찍다 데데다지 에네 심지 다들 잡고다 심지 라고 요래다 도치 비심지 라고 그래다 심 도치 비심지 데도치 심지 계레지 요레스다 땅가 산juk 세레데 야나 심지 데다지 요레스.
The first one is so it's called the king-like mind generation of bodhicitta, where you think that first I will attain enlightenment, and once I have attained enlightenment, then I will establish all other sentient beings in a state of enlightenment. So this is like the first level of cultivating bodhicitta, which is also bodhicitta, but it's the first level.
Rangda semji tamji leje ga sanji ji komporta par je sambi samno te dawa ji la ishi tambi semji se te dawa te semji ke rai ke yuris.
So then the second one is where you think I and all sentient beings shall attain the state of enlightenment together. And this is like it's called the captain-like mind generation of bodhicitta.
Really, she tambi semji se ta te la trapa tawa semji la gres. And semji lo cheshi semji yakshi te ta zo tawa semji se. Ta 다르레스 나 당보 심지 탐지 산지지 공방 라고 디니 지니랑 산지지 공방다 프라세 냥 비쌈노 지크로 데데지 칸에 지 기와드바 데데지라 에네 다 조타 심지시 다 이시 다 심지시 다 데다고 지라 에네 에미 비심지라 그러와 에미 비심지시 다데 심지 톱 치시다고 지 약치다고 지 데데지 지 요레스 나 파파 야비양 기 지리요 비심지라 다 데데지 요레라고 요레와 데 임바인디자네
So this is like the captain or wisdom, is it mind generation? And then the best one, the highest one, is the shepherd-like mind generation, where you think that first I want to bring all sentient beings to enlightenment, and only after they have attained enlightenment shall I attain enlightenment. So practicing the Dharma of virtue with that motivation is the shepherd-like mind generation, which is also like a wisdom mind generation, which is incomparable, and it is said to be the best, the highest mind generation, and it's the one of Noble Manjushri.
Tani semji deda tamji tas nga zu chu lam nga da sap jo dan revi toni ane ma ji jiba yana semji deda tamji la ane tas bena chu lam da jo lam deda tamji kap semji dela mi ba na jo bi semji sin da de de jores mi ba na jo bi semji
Me ba?
Mi ba ma na mo sin mi ba jo bi semji.
Oh.
Sami tong la mi ba tsam ji ma do sami tong de la tam ji te kam la ni stu yo mar wa ti ba yin di chan te kam spa pa la mi ba la ju pas mi ba la ju bi sim ji la gure ta ti chulam de jolang yong ki nyam se len ki te la tam ji ki samu ki to je jin de che ta wa jin da tu yo mar wa yin na ri hi mi ta la te ni ta chulam de jolang te da tam ji ni stu yo to ku yo wa yin na ngu su so ki jil po ya te en ko chulam ma tha pa da la to ku yo mar se ki yo re ti di chan chulam de jolang la ni bi kam sa mi ba na ju bi sim ji la gure ta.
And so then also the mind generation is explained in the context of the 5 paths and the 10 bhumis. And so in the context of the 5 paths first, the first 2, which is the path of accumulation and the path of application, those 2 are the paths of ordinary sentient beings who engage in practice, but who have not yet realized the profound truth of emptiness. So this mind generation on those levels of the path of accumulation and application is called the aspiration mind, the aspiring, the mind generation of which is an aspiration. So here they are on the path of learning and training in the ultimate meaning, but they have not yet completely realized it as it is, because this is only realized once one reaches the third path of seeing.
드니 사탐 되잖아 사탐본데 사담바게 받을라 나 확sab당 심지시 다 대감서 바발라 심지 그 뭐지 당로 제는 제로고 요런데 다바 사 제바니 제바 가와 쩌와 때다다 아 넘버 메비 심지시 다 대갑 때와 탐지라 네 그런 samuk ton te da tam ji chai ji su su gi ji la kan kan chang lu bu yo inde chan number me bi sim ji inde san ji ki sala inde drapa pa bi sim ji ta sim ji si ya de ji pe cha ya na a cho ta ta ne sa chok se ji ba ne zon san ji ki sala ma pau ka ba da sim ji te da tam ji la main ta ka da ji wa a ro tang ro ke ta de de ji ki ko ne main ta ga yo re spe ne chen che ji ba yo ya na chen go ni main ji ta ta nga zo sa cha lu bi de ji ni yang sa cha ji ba la pam du di main ka ha ji ta ga no ya no ko che te rang re di na ya 다 사자 롱바 만다와 럽디 메 만다와 타와 나지 나초 다다 산juk semji ba ne zong de sanji sala ma thaw ba da semji ki jenti daga ro re di na ya ela topa ta tawa ta topa mandawa wang ke and semji de da tam je la me ta sa mandawa ji wa ta de ji ro yo res e sam ta lam sak jo ta lam a ko ni che par sak jo lam a ke tawa de tam de bi ki thuni ne ji semji che par ya ba ta de ji re
sa thambo tang tumba partoki min khare so then in the context of the bhumis, so from the first to the seventh bhumi, the mind generation of bodhicitta is called the mind generation of completely pure intention, and then that is its essence. Then from the 8th to the 10th bhumi, it is called, the bodhicitta is called the bodhicitta that is without like kind of appearing like factors, like without any kind of appearing concepts. And so here one really comes to realize, as one goes higher, one really comes to realize the true profound nature of reality. And so then finally one removes the last obscuration, attains the bhumi of enlightenment of a Buddha. And basically starting from now, the bodhicitta that we now generate until we attain enlightenment is the same stream, continuum of bodhicitta. It is just given different names depending on what stage of bhumi we are on. So for example, it's just like a river is flowing from the mountain down, and then it passes through many different places and countries and so on. And everywhere it passes through, the river might be given a different name, but in the end it's still the same river. It's just called different names depending on which area it passes through. So similarly, the continuum of bodhicitta is the same from now until we attain the state of enlightenment, but depending on the various realizations and developments that we attain along the path, we give it is given different names. And so this is how the mind generation is explained in the context of the 5 paths and the 10 bhumis.
Okay, today tata natso kama kashijila ani rest ya.
Yeah, we take a 30 minutes break.
Mane beme hoje, mane beme hoje, mane beme hoje, oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o mane pe me hore oi mane pe me hore mane pe me hore o ne pe me hore Hello?
Hello.
다 가서 연재를 다 잡니마 안 로야 지르와
Also, that we continue the teachings.
드니 다 드니 텐다베 심지 텔라타 톱사지 고니 아니 심지 마 소속 질 nem비 고니 톱사르 고니 아니 라파 달리 중 근접 심지 다 타와 친일 중 동당 심지 심다 드레데 지게 남아니스 요 임바레
Tini karare. Kondak tini karare.
대당 아주 다다 심지 여러와 산족신 심지 소속 기질 마 동바 심지 그 동바 링 거와 델림비캅스 델린처럼로 만라와 다 소속 랑기 질라스 심지 마 폼디자니 타고고니 예면 마바니스지 요레스 에 간다레스나 라파 달레 중 컨셉 심지 다 차와 친이를 중 동단 심지 신다 드르드 지지 요레 나 라파 달레 중 컨셉 심지 다 가르레스나 다 심지 담보 심지 서지 심지 메바 간사지 심지 질 마티 간사지 심지 말링고나 아니 초가 차린 라서 발가 쏟티 말링고 요르와 초가 차린 디라 탐질 아테네 는 가서 질 마 심지 레야텔라 아 라파 달레 중 컨셉 심지 라고 요레 근데 차와 친이를 중 동단 심지 시디자니 디 남시 그 첼라 가서 아니 통남 템박 온데 저때 아니 사모 동반이지 동선지 말로바 랑게 질라 또 픽업스 아니 다다키 심지티 근데 동당 심지 그 뭐를 제는 거로 대인바인디 자니 이들 교활을 인지들 라파 달중 컨셉 심지다 동담 또 온디 자니 심지 질이 제텔라 동담 질이 픽업스 심지텔라 하와 친이를 주고 동당 심지 있습니다 된다고기 아 심지 톱사 그거니 다 랑게 질라 마 톱사 그거니 된다 지기 이와 요레스 이와니스
So then, so once we have cultivated this mind of the mind generation of bodhicitta, so there's two ways in which we can actually receive the vow, the bodhisattva vow of bodhicitta. And so one is what I get on the course level, where one takes the vow of the relative bodhicitta based on like more coarse signs and concepts. So that is, for example, when one hasn't cultivated bodhicitta on the ultimate level, so one follows as like a ritual, and based on this ritual, one takes the bodhisattva vow. And then the second one is the subtle way of taking this vow, which is on the basis of knowing reality itself, and that is related to the ultimate bodhicitta. So that is once one has actualized the path of seeing the profound truth as it really is, without any corruption, then the mind generation, the mind naturally becomes bodhicitta of the ultimate sort, the ultimate bodhicitta. So there is these two divisions of taking bodhicitta in terms of subtlety. One is more coarse and the other one is subtle.
드니 심지 대 ngô korong ko ni simji ngô korong ko ni yewa chi sha yan simji korong na yewa namba ni yores te simji ki ngô korong ko ni yewa chi jana yewa namba ni ba te ka ni bo te kar re sina ane mongba simji dan yuba simji si namba ni yores ane mongba simji te simji tamji tu sanji ko ko sam de ya te ta korong mongba simji re do yorwa ane simji tamji sanji ji gongpang ko go sam ba sam de mai ba ni se ta na 위키 소남 그 초다 맹매 이시 그 촉대다 담지 쌓이는데 산에 답변은 바로 좀 바로 리빙이 보이죠. 공반이 되다 담지 체지는 공대 근데 엘라스바 알랭니스 타임이 채나 네 건축비 셈제스네 다 되는 거지 하는 요래서 되는 건축비 셈제스
There's something with your connection, I think. But so anyways, so there's also, in terms of cultivating the mind of bodhicitta, there's also another twofold division, which is the aspirational bodhicitta and the engaging bodhicitta. And so first, for the aspirational bodhicitta, one has an aspiration, thinking, I want to establish all sentient beings in a state of enlightenment. But then one doesn't just leave it with that aspiration, but one actually is then doing things to establish them in enlightenment. So that is the engaging bodhicitta. So then one actually is engaging in practices such as the conceptual accumulation of merit and the non-conceptual accumulation of wisdom, for ways of gathering disciples and 6 paramitas and so forth. So one engages in various virtuous activities and practices. in order to establish beings in enlightenment. And that is called the engaging bodhicitta.
다 딘딘다 치게 심지 요바티다 담지 하고 자듯한 단 도나 간다다 제고 요리스나 딘딘 나초기 양리 양다 다다 양리 양다 딘지 남칼라 산지의 산죽 선바티다 담지 인기스 곰 딘이 라니 지레 심지의 말롱 산지 지스 양리 양다 산지의 산죽 선바티다 담지 소와 양리 양는 데바당 ane simji teta tamji ki ta korong che tela nga ki sanji ki kumpang ma tha pa dela bechung za gi yin se teta tamji le chen da chama ka gang ta adi na ana de shi ji ba yong chi ni ni par te bechung che gi yin san yang ne yang de korong nang ne de 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 ji gong ya de mi si bi ki chin bo cha gi yores.
So then once you have cultivated such a motivation of bodhicitta, then again and again you bring it up in your mind, so you visualize the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas actually being before you in space. And so first you have recited this mind generation, this commitment of bodhicitta, and then after that, again and again, you supplicate to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, saying that I will make effort for the sake of sentient beings until I attain enlightenment. In this life and in all future lives, I will make effort to bring about the happiness of sentient beings. So it's very important to reflect in this way again and again. So then always think that the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are before you, with you, in space, always there as your witness, and think that they're always there until I attain enlightenment. So you completely surrender with trust to all of these Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, thinking that they're always actually there. And then also with your speech, it's very important again and again to recite the bodhicitta prayer, the one where we say, may bodhicitta arise where it has not yet arisen, may it not decline where it has arisen, and may it ever further increase.
바로 좀 때다 탐제 라랭기스 마디 북한다 담보로 양리 양의 중요한 빼미시피 개침보를 빼는 다진냥 받아 다진 제와스 양도 또 양리 양의 소속 칸반노는 데이드잖아요. 된된데지라 양리 양의 삼노도 양리 양의 로 중요하네. 되니 인기스 남식 라랭기스는 로이캅스 나 빼미시피 리하고 자그레스.
And so then when we engage in the practice of the 6 paramitas, even if we are not currently actually doing those practices, engaging in the 6 paramitas, first we should just train our mind in the 6 paramitas. So you are by yourself in your home and you train your mind in the reflection on equalizing self with others and then exchanging self with others. And when you train your mind in this way again and again, then when it one day actually comes to really actually practicing the 6 paramitas, it will become quite easy.
네 다진 냠바 곰라 디사네타 근데지 곰고 요레스나타 디다 탐지 다진 냠바다 다진 제완다 양의 양의 삼노를 검송하지는 디 남신의 생생진 게 동달라 인동 심진 인동 드비카 스페미시 강아자와를 밀리는데 자가 요레스 디말 아무 다진 냠바다 다진 제와다 심미진다 탐지 양의 양의 마공와이나 근데 드닉 산적 심지마 마인 빠지 지비지 타파 칼레카와 가시 지부완다 타와이나 쟁릉볼라 단다 니마 타파 된다지 차가 요래서 대인바인디 짜니 아니 딱 다신양바 곰디 짜니 딱 간다지 공고레스나더니 랑라 가르 노바 나지진라 대다른 노고 요래더니 랑라 가르 문도와 나지진라에 대다른 노고 요마레 삼피포치 요르와다 된다지 대 양리 양다 공고 요래 다신양바 곰시디 짜니.
So, when we train the mind first through meditation in exchanging self with others and equalizing self with others. So then when we train in that, then one day when it comes to it, to actually doing something to benefit others, then it will not be very difficult. But if we do not have this basis of really having trained our mind in exchanging self with others and equalizing self with others, the four immeasurables, if that has not arisen in like an authentic way, really uncontrived, truly in our mind, it will be difficult to also cultivate a true uncontrived bodhicitta. And even if it arises, it cannot abide, it cannot remain within your mind when you encounter various conditions, circumstances. So now with regard to equalizing self with others, how we reflect on this is that you think just whatever I want, this is also what others want. And whatever I do not want, also others do not want that. So that is the thought you should habituate to again and again.
네, 지금 가서 랑글리라 빼로나 예로 노바 마지 지스와 나지티 소소 랑을 차빼레네 예로 심기네 피마도와야나 너무 지바게 담자지 요거레스 가노 제랑라 대신 도와나 지진라양 대신 도고 요아인디 짠데다 핀치도 기아데다 든든데 지게 라네인데 할래야 그게 진보 요레스.
So you say that take yourself as an example, and take your own body, yourself as an example, and do not cause harm to others. And if you cannot benefit others, at least you should have a firm commitment in your mind about I'm not going to harm others, at least. Because just as I want to be happy, likewise, in the same way, all others also want to be happy. So that's really extremely important.
Tani daji jiwa lati tsani ene kandida chi yoresini ta rang lida lomcho geza kara yomi teta stop nga tang jenjuwa menhinda kara yowa da yin simjin teta tamjala pa pungya tang ene yin simjin tamji dongha noba kanga kachi yowa rang jili tse lingko yo sambo samo kanong chi teta da chi che kore esi tela daji jiwa lo gore chitang namjin gong jaan di tsani nga tsu wok pa tong di kapsi rang lida lomcho geza deji yung su dupa yin simjin teta tamji jili pa pungya tang and walk 10 because in the rang yin tonga da tamji rang ji le cheling yo ba ta tin de chi gomya chi yo res ta tin de chi la and ko ta jin je wa si ta tin de chi yo res.
And then exchanging self with others, or like putting others before self, is that where you want to give away everything, all goodness to others, your own body, your enjoyments, all your resources, all your virtues, your power and reputation, anything good, you want to give it away to sentient beings. And in return, you want to take on all of their suffering and all of their difficulties and hardships. So for the practice of exchanging self with others, there's this practice that we often do, where we inhale, and on the inhalation we think that we exhale first, and on the exhalation you think that I'm giving away all of my virtue and all of my happiness and wealth and power and so forth to all sentient beings. So on the exhalation you give it all away, and then on the inhalation you think that I'm taking on all the suffering and the miseries of other sentient beings. So this is what we call exchanging self with others.
네 된다고 그 삼노데 양의 양의 공부하야나 되니 진 남시 그체는 다시 양바야나 다시 지와야나래 되니 재미 이제 대다 담지 양의 양의 공부하야나 진 남시 그체라 네 소속니스 라네 땅데 강아자와 메리 차야데 요레스.
And so if you meditate and practice this again and again, notice reflection on exchanging self with others and equalizing self with others and the four immeasurables, if you habituate to this, then one day when it actually comes to actually doing something to benefit others, it will become very easy, not very difficult.
Tene tawa ke ta yin simji te da tamje do yin dong zhiba da ran dong li dong wa te da tamje samlo lo gongba ya ko gongcha ya ko tap chari ji sitni paro chimba zhou te da tamje nyam sa lang tene ka de shi da me ba te na cha gre sitni da paro chimba zhou te da tamje ramba yin da nyam sa lang tap par ji go res.
So once you have habituated your mind to that, the thought of wishing to benefit others and giving up your own benefit, then when it then actually comes to practicing the 6 paramitas, that practice then is not very difficult. And so then at this stage, then one should practice the 6 paramitas.
Ni kalong te sanjok sin da na ya ma da vi tu ni tni na jimba da tong ko twa yanas.
And so then, for example, when one practices, then while never remaining separate from a motivation of bodhicitta, one, for example, practices generosity.
Tni te yamba indi tsani ta paro chamba trok te nga so ta simji kalong ten da song sa bi jis paro chamba trok te ma nyam ni chitap ji go yore te indi tsani ta paro chamba trok nu de tambu jimbi paro de chamba re.
So once we have cultivated such mind generation of bodhicitta, then we have to actually practice the 6 paramitas, of which the first one is the paramita of generosity.
Ni tambu jimbi paro chamba de la yang sakti mara ba na ba sam yo re sanjing jimba da chi jimba da manji chap jimba si. Ni sanjing jimba la ti tsani ta sanjing jimba la ti tsani chorong ke chesane moda kangba amjor 같이 요나 대다 탐지 통탄은 저거로 요래야 메신 발때 양은 저거 요래 중산의 초롱께 고르모 강지 에샤 강지 때와이나 자포바 강지와이나 양 그런 자 그런 이상복 khoan 때와이나 하는 게 있어왔던 요래스.
So the paramita of generosity is divided into 3 different kinds. That is the generosity of giving material things. Then secondly, the generosity of giving the Dharma. And third, the generosity of giving protection from fear. So the first one, the generosity of giving material things. So that could mean on a larger scale that for example, the things like even your car, your house, or money and so forth, whatever you can, you would give it to others to help, or on a smaller scale, even if you just have like $1 and so on, a little bit, or you offer someone a cup of tea. If you give it with a good motivation, then it becomes such an act of generosity.
Tani chiji jimba labdi tsani chiji jimba labdi tsani ta chi tseki chi ne chesa ne ta sanji shakya tibi chiji pombo jeta jitong de da tam mala hi twaya na de yore man te manana chi tseki ki jin semji kanang ruwa chi sen lu pi twaya jimba si de tsani ta de de ching zingo yores.
So then the second one is the generosity of giving the Dharma. And so again, in a vast sense, it is like the Buddha Shakyamuni who gave the Dharma teaching 84,000 different Dharma teachings. So if one can teach the Dharma, give the Dharma in this extensive way, then one should do that. But even if one just says a single word of Dharma that benefits a single sentient being, a person, then that is very significant, and it becomes a practice of generosity, the generosity of giving the Dharma.
Mazo kashi su simji mayana ya tando yana da su chip kandawa mazo nya de sula sega do simji sula mabu chega do den rawa chila manjab chek manjab
And then the third one is the generosity of giving protection from fear. And so that is to give protection to those without protection, and like a shelter or refuge to those without refuge. And basically, when one is able to do something to protect a sentient being from fear or some kind of difficulty, then it becomes a generosity of giving protection from fear. And it could be a human being, or it could be an animal. For example, with animals, we often practice life liberating, life liberating practices, like fish, and we liberate their lives. And all of that is at the generosity of giving protection from fear.
Ninga zo tata namja jindin ke sern doyan rawo tang taga nongji chepjin dong da chetor dong da che toma eda tamji sansen ki jimbi kongsen rogres.
Also, sometimes we are practicing like a sour smoke offering, or we're offering a water dorma, and that belongs to the generosity of giving material things.
Tani nipa jimbi tambu jimbi paro tsambasi nipa tsichamji paro de tsambasi tsichamji paro tsambala nipjo tumbi tsitam de gewa chi buki tsitam semji tongze ki tsitam sine ta tinda ji yore. Ana tambu nipjo tumbi tsitam siya de linga yi ji ko ni yindu mujwe gewa mgewa ji bo tamji pangwa de la nipjo tumbi tsitam si.
So then second parameter is the parameter of ethical discipline, which also has three kinds, called the discipline through vows, the discipline of gathering virtue, and the discipline of acting for the benefit of sentient beings. So the first one, the discipline through vows, which is a discipline of refraining from negative actions, refers to abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind.
Tani chapang ke tam gewa chido ke tsitam semji tongze ke tsitam teda tamjeng ndona gewa chido sine gewa ma chi yimchu drap cha thap kungje kung thap tsiya tele gewa chido ke tsitam siya rawata semji tongze ke tsitam si de chande randong pe de se ne ta randong chawaru ne se chawi jis ane semji jinji tong dewi ngi po yela gwa dewi ngi po yek goni ne dewi ngi po yela tini ane ko semji ke tong se de patela and
then the discipline of gathering virtue refers to practicing even just a single virtue or all of the 10 virtuous actions. And then thirdly, the discipline of acting for the benefit of sentient beings is that once one has completely given up all selfish motives, concerns, then one really acts for the benefit of sentient beings, for example, through the 4 ways of gathering disciples. Then the third parameter is the parameter of patience.
Ni chitang zobe paro de tsambala yinji longzhao de zoba chitsa kapji ge zoba samo tongla mata bi zoba asne ta tinde de chik nam samsa chiche ji yore tene yinji longzhao la zoba la bi tsane tene yin paro po de da tamji rang khangin chingi dongle jable marab na ta ndona renda ngogor las pa marab kachi chiwa yana tela zoba chiche tela ane yinji longzhao la zoba as yore.
So that is also divided into 3 kinds, which is the patience of being willing to accept suffering inflicted by others, and then the patience when helping others, and the patience of being fearless with regard to the ultimate truth. So the first one is the patience of being willing to accept the suffering given by others. So that is, for example, when others mistreat you, for example, treat you very harshly, insult you, or are very nasty to you and humiliate you and deprecate you and so forth, then in the face of such attacks by others, to practice patience in these moments is the first kind of patience.
And chitsukaji ka zoba labditsane tan chit dibikapsita tambi chit dibikapsita kali katsin thewayana kali kandanda jin thewayana de chi tala zosin chimbo hingtap chimbo kembe pahlane jejina and koro chi tsarta kapji chagi yores de yimba yinditsane tere chitsukaji ka zobas.
And then the second one is the patience when helping others or practicing the Dharma. And so that is, well, as you're practicing the Holy Dharma, whatever difficulty you encounter, you will persevere through the difficulty for the sake of others with a patient forbearance and a strength of heart or courage. So that is the second kind of patience.
Tani samo tongla mata pa si disane ta chetang ke samo tongla te samo tongba ni tongla kokore ta tela chetang ke ta je ta je ta ji ru lu ta tsar ta vi tsar te da tam ji kom jak ta de ji yore ta te da tam ji la ana nga so ta tipa kapsni tipa tisam kom sam se pi kapsni ana ta ji so so ge ji le che sa mare sam sa do te kan de yana sam sa do ta ga no ji ke te de things te de ji kan de ji yana sam they are that kashi the tanang jega the ji yores tongba ni sia da samo jibi ta je da ta ji lu tawa de da tam ji tong go ndi san da jing so so ke ha de yang da ba ji ha ma wa da ni bi tu de gom da de san de gom ya ko ji ma ta wa yin ne de da tanang je ya yores de da tam ji da ma ta wa so ba ji ji de ne ko samo tong la ma ta bi so ba la gres.
And then the third one is the patience of being fearless with regard to the ultimate truth, which is the truth of emptiness. So it is related to meditation practice that transcends the 4 or 8 or 16 extremes or limitations. And so when one reaches this point in one's practice of, transcendence and seeing the ultimate truth of emptiness, then sometimes it can be unfathomable for one's mind, and one may even feel a bit like deflated that I can't do this, or what is it really, and so on. And then fear arises. This kind of fear then arises. So it arises. And when one transcends these 4, 8 extremes, then one understands the meaning of this, but one has not completely, authentically realized it, and also one has not mastered, has attained mastery of meditation on this fact. And so as a result of that, fear arises. So then in that moment one practices patience, and then this is called the patience of being fearless with regard to the ultimate truth.
Then Thupsang tropa zondi ji paro tsamba na ene tel kochi zondi da jowi zondi chupar men zimbi zondi se ten amba sam yore se teni chetang zondi de zondi se ya godong de ton givili la troa yo wa tanda ta chilin zengores.
And then the fourth paramita is the paramita of diligence, and there is also 3 kinds: the armor-like diligence, then the diligence which takes delight in virtue, and the diligence which works for the benefit of beings. And so generally the defining characteristic of diligence is to take delight in the practice of virtue.
Teni tambo kochi zondi na kanet de go yore sina ane mong jawa si da chi ba jawa kuma te da sanji da sanju sum ba te da tamji ki chi dong da kap ji da hirin be zong halia ki ji yore da ten de jing nga zo kan tong yu de zane o kong na ba ke ten ji wa yana nga zo ke gawa yung gre sam de ya ji sam no de ji lo bi sam no za wa ro tong ya yo ma re si ane chi de bi ka kong na ba ke ten de ji zin nga ki ten de go to go nga ki ti ha sa ki ma re wa yana ya 이체의 갑자기 단 힘이 딜하스기 말해와야나 이 도스기 모용와지 mi partem bi chung che ko sambi samno chik la ane kochi chondri la yores.
So the first one is the Amo-like diligence. When we look at what the hardships and the efforts that the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas of the past have made, then we might feel into a kind of a laziness of self-deprecation, feeling that how will I ever be able to do that? How can I do that if they did these magnificent things? So then we must not, self-deprecate in this way, but think that I need to practice in this way, and even if it is not greater than what they have done, I surely must make an effort in the same way that they did.
Mazo tata chi chik jimdo lo chi yuwa yana ta chik danta jima dawa jima lo jima kali drap ko sambi samno chi yorwa ta tindiki samno te pango ko yores chik yore ta ene chi jimdo ke lo yo sabi jis ene chik tata ke korong chi drap ko yores ato pe yagra yakza siwa na yinsi yakza sadi kare saga yores ene pe kono tambo ke deni sa de jin chani kawa sa de mek de chi ta lamsang 사기 요래와 대난신 지내는 거치 좀도 뭐 요바 요 차비지 다다라니 그런 치 잠도 다 되는지 제고고 요래스 다데 되는지.
And then the second kind, yeah. So the second kind of diligence is the it's called the applied diligence or the insatiable diligence, is where, first of all, we want to practice the Dharma, but then often we procrastinate it, we put it off until later. For example, I'm going to practice tomorrow or next year or something like that. So this thought has to be abandoned. So once we have developed that wish to practice the Dharma, then we have to practice the Dharma right away, right now. For example, it's just like a yak eating grass in the summer. So the yak is insatiable. He eats, and then while he's eating, he's already looking at where can I eat next, where can I eat more. So he's constantly looking around and quickly eating and eating more. So just like that, when we want to practice the Dhamma, once we have that wish, then we have to do it right away in this moment.
직디 안에 랑기 참반히 바다 카도 gemjo tuesdays jiwa yina ana yang taken direction samne ta gewa de yin sam lo de ne yang take same chi ne dewa mayin ba ne ji sanji 공방 마 딱 똑방론도 맞지 게 받아라 근데 그러면 티니 되나 지 쇼양 만 티니 다 되나 지 gewa 잡고 요레스.
And so then also part of being insatiable with Dharma practice is that one never feels that now it's enough. So for example, you have done some retreat and you have done your practice, your prayers. You won't feel that, okay, I did what I should do and that's enough. But you will never feel, if you have this diligence, you will never feel like that's enough now. But you will feel that I have to continue to practice all the time until I attain the state of enlightenment.
Ni dona zondi labdi tsani ene sosorani gewi lila prowa yo ba gongshi la ene ko hata ba ta jine gewa toya tela ene ta 바로 zondi ji 바로 tsamba la gres.
So the defining characteristic of diligence is to delight in virtuous activity. And so therefore, if you make such an effort and diligently apply yourself to virtue, then you are practicing the paramita of diligence.
Something 바로 tsambas ngapa something 바로 tsambares.
Then the fifth paramita is the paramita of meditation.
아니 something 바로도 좀 봤을 때는 something 바로 봐 something 바로 공라 마요 공통다 방보 니 웬바 안로다 다가 노지 니 웬바 자고야 페미시 피케친 버리스 니 웬바 때 맞아와야나 상에 승에다 다니 차당 마보 땀지 중앙 들들지 레송아야나 니 빼네 다고 something 공야 보지 용야 페미시 깔리 타오라고 지들 요레스 인바인디 자니 니 웬바 다 양마나 사차 장보 the tang then something ma gombi mona te da tam ke tabre chi ko ya te kichimbo yores.
And so before we actually even begin with the practice of meditation, it's important that we first find ourselves a secluded place to practice, because if we remain in a very busy place where there's a lot of distractions and all kinds of people, enemies and friends, and that trigger thoughts of attachment and aversion and so on. In such an environment, it will be difficult to develop a true state of meditation. So therefore, first one should find oneself a secluded place, or at least a positive place for one's practice, kind of as a preparation for one's meditation practice. That's very important.
Then ni wen ba sa cha den da tin cha di jis then something is gong go yores something is gong di zan yang deva da sarva matu wa de da tham ge shen cha jin de de men tin shen de gong de ya tiang gong yang to ba chi cha yo mares.
So then once you have found this place of seclusion and you meditate there, so that is then you have to actually begin the practice of meditation. And so then various experiences may arise, such as bliss, clarity, and non-conceptuality. But if you meditate while being attached to these experiences, then meditation will not become true or authentic.
Yang nyam ji shenpa desar mato pa te da nyam ji shenpa da traya ye tawa ye na yang pongpa ji ko res na pongpi chulen zeng de ya tiang gom yak tang ji re de ina yang gom ta tao de mares.
And so then when you abandon, you give up all attachment to those experiences of bliss, clarity, and non-conceptuality, then it's also possible that you might just grasp at only emptiness, which in some ways it is a way of meditating too, but it is not the ultimate meditation.
Zamba to topa te da thamji tra de chini number matu ngo le nyam par ya thwa ya na tene te korong ne to ne gom tha to se ya gom se tin se ya ro ta te da chi re si chatang ke tata kuni shi ba desa matu pinyang la shin ba ta ga no tong zeng ki nyen po la shin ba gom ya te da tham ji gom ka cha shi ri ya lam tr ba tam bo ni ba re re ti na ya gom tha tok te tong zeng ki nyen po lu ta ta ne chini number matu pi ngo la en lo chi ji ti ju thwa te ne gom ki tha tok te res.
So therefore, if one is able to rest within a non-conceptual state of reality itself, without any grasping thoughts in the mind whatsoever, that's the ultimate meditation. So as we mentioned before, when for as long as we are attached to the experiences of bliss, meditation, and non-conceptuality, and also the grasping even at emptiness, these constitute conceptual structures, which are, of course, also an aspect along the stages of the meditation path, but ultimately they need to be transcended too. And the ultimate meditation is to rest within a state that transcends all of these conceptual structures and abides within a non-conceptual state of reality itself.
Then
Sixth is the paramita of wisdom. So generally, the paramita of wisdom can be understood as the ultimate truth of emptiness.
네, 즉 당보 티바제는 나속에 다다당 나속에 티바제는 티바다 삼바제 티바제는 용배자다 라마데다 삼게 소피기 지는 나서 사모던 같은 이데 다당미스 이게 눈에 들어게 하고 요레스.
So this can be understood on the basis of the vehicles and the teachings that we have received from the gurus and how it is explained in the scriptures.
근데 인기스 똑바는 나서 사담보 마타바이나 사담보 통나 마타바이나 안에 거로 사모 동반이 동데 나서 인기스 똑똑 말레스.
And however, when it comes to the actual realization of this profound truth of emptiness, it is not realized before one has reached the first bhumi, which is the path of seeing.
tani te yamba yinde tsani ta chi nga zo samo tongpa ni ki tong gonggu yore se yore ta chitangke samo tongpa ni te tani tangus tupi ti tata tisong ke nga zo tata ha ko yore ni so so ki jil to pa ten ta sa tangbo to ba ta tonam langwa no tonam ta sa no sa tangbo ngus tam ti tsani ta so jil che ko yore ane kya changwa te sanji ki sa da ma do yo marwa te yamba yinde tsani samo tongpa ni yang ni yang da gonggu yore se nga zo ta mambo chi le she te yore.
So we speak, however, about having to meditate on the profound truth of emptiness, and it just to begin with is more an understanding of the profound truth of emptiness, but the actual realization of it occurs only at the first bhumi, which is the same as the path of seeing of the five paths. And then it is only brought to complete perfection once one has reached the state, the bhumi of Buddhahood. So it is that until then, again and again, we have to meditate on this profound meaning of emptiness.
따뜻한게 ngazo samo tongba ni gonggo yore se de yore ta samo tongba ni se ya de 가르치는 gonggo yore 세나 ini ngazo tata tongha do yo mare tongha ta 강라 ti니 중고 yore se tongha de nyumo batte da tamjele ti니 중고 yore nyumo batte kawani 중고 da ta yonde chane in nyumo batte danjele ti니 중고 yore te imba yende chane ngazo ke dame de to yo danjele de pang de dame to goya de pemisi ki chimbores dame sinandra samo tongba ni tong sinandra chipareta.
So we say that we have to meditate on this profound emptiness. And why do we have to do that? Because we do not want to suffer. And where does suffering come from? It comes from the afflictive emotions. And where do the afflictive emotions come from? They come from self-grasping. So therefore we have to abandon self-grasping. We have to realize selflessness. And so selflessness, this realization of selflessness and the profound truth of emptiness are the same thing.
tani ngazo tata tata ngazo jili yo dele kita nyomu tongha te ta tamji danzen sungko ro danzen la ya te kangre re sina kangzalen zibi danzen de chilin zibi ensi te de jina ba ni yores 강사는 집이 단전 시대 쓰는 것도 링아 이상 것도 라는 센도 또 대란 티니 공부가 공부도 숨을 티니 힘이 나오냐 빙아제 난전지 또 잠시다 강사가 다스네 다 되게 진행승 요르와.
So all suffering, all afflictive emotions arise from self-grasping, and there's two kinds of self-grasping. There's the grasping at the self of a person and the grasping at the self of phenomena. First, the grasping at the self of a person means to identify with one's body, speech, and mind, with one's five aggregates as the self, thinking that this is me. So this is the grasping at the self of a person.
Chiji danzin labdi tsane ta ngai khangpa ngai nangma ngai moda ngai jakap ngai mare ngai sacha sine ta tini pando ramba jinda ta roya chi yorwa tang ane chi dancing la tende da chi la gore tini ngai jimsin tela tini ta chadang lo chi yorwa tam de ngi churi chi par bu yin churi tini chadang lo chi ji si le sa indi chan tini ha jung je ke jen ro chi chak chi tini chang ro go yori si dar ma ran ba chin da yin ba yin di chan ta nga cho ke dancing si ya da pang gore se de ya ke jimsin ro ta tende da chi chak yorwa.
And so then there is the grasping at the self of phenomenon, which means, for example, to think that this is like mine, like my house or my family, my car, my country, my ethnicity, my place, and so forth. There's many different kinds. So it is because of this sense of mine that these thoughts of attachment and aversion arise. So it is because of this basic concept of this is mine, this belongs to me, and this belongs to others, and so on. And so then if we accumulate karma on the basis of that, of such grasping, then eventually, gradually, when the causes and conditions come together, results will ripen into suffering. And so it arises from self-grasping, and that's the reason why we have to abandon self-grasping.
Dame tongpa ni mus to yun de chan de ta gom ja ta long da de rpa jimchi ma bo jil de dam ka za da chi da dame pa mus to yun de chan ni nga so ta chadang ke je na ma da tham chi na yama da malang na ji cha ro yo re se pe cha ja na ta nga chong kha ba mo da la so ba ta nga chi sin ma bo chi she de yo wa da tham chi pu ke je mo na ji chi pu ke je mo na ji cha ro re se ta pu je mo pu ka sa nga so pu je mo che chi de da tham ji la mo ne to ne ke xian ba da这话全部个个呢，他得到钱的，得到他们钞票把那我那种的错有了哇，那我做没钱没钱的，得到他们钞票的，得错钱没有嘛了哇，这南西个什么东西，你东西就马路个当的真，一点个啥话得到他们的，不怎么难的，等下弄的一马的没那么着急，差着不了，现在那这差差别几十，那个恰当结果呀给，金钱可能没完了，恰当结果没完，恰当结果了，金钱的我做达到我是我。ni nga sin da ne da cha dang chi go yorwa ni nam chi sam tong ba ni tong chai jin da to sa na da cha dang chi go ya ko ne pa da da cha go yorwa.
So in order to realize emptiness, the nature of selflessness, so we practice, we meditate, and we try to comprehend it by means of the scriptures that prove that point and so forth. So basically, once we have gone through that and we have actually realized it, then I'm looking back and looking at all the attachment and the anger in this world, it all appears just like a dream at that time. So now we speak about so many things that we preoccupy ourselves with, like this is my car and this is my house and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. So from the perspective of a realized one, all of that appears like a child's game. So when we look back at the time when we were children, when we were really young, everything we did, all these games that we played seemed to be so real, and we're so attached to that, and we did it with so much love and passion. So we had a real feeling that this is it was a real thing, not a game to us. But now we have grown up, we are adults, and now those games do not really generate a very exciting, special feeling in us any longer, because we know it's just a game, it's not real. So once one has realized emptiness, then one sees all worldly activity just like that, just like a child's game or like a dream or like an illusion. And due to that, one has no more reason to cultivate thoughts of attachment and aversion. So right now, it is because of our grasping at it's me and it's mine that we develop all these feelings of attachment and aversion. But once we have realized the profound truth of emptiness, then it seems that there is no real reason any longer to cultivate all those feelings of attachment and aversion.
드니 다 대시럽지 바로 들어봐시. 어쨌든 때는 짐비 바로 들어반다고 찍 차잖아. 드니 바로 들어봐도가 장거래시. 바로 들어봐도 다가 장거래시.
So this is the parameter of wisdom. And then, for example, if we just take the parameter of generosity, within only the parameter of generosity, all the 6 parameters are complete.
때는 가서 짐비 바로 들어반는 취지 짐반다고 찍 시와에는 시행킹기 뭐다 시에지기 취다 시에시 포마 삼장 상에는 근데 짐비 바로 들어반자 요래 대 치시비 값은 니바가 또 라소파라 직 퍼거 거사 메다 니다 땅 다 탐지라 만지비 고니 시에바데 네 점지 바로 들어반자 요래와 니 치시비 값은 아니 값이 강아 돈이 제네 제바데 소비 바로 들어반자 요래스.
So, for example, in the context of the generosity of giving the Dharma, so first of all, when the one who teaches the Dharma and the Dharma that he teaches, and then the disciple who receives the Dharma, and all of these are complete, then that constitutes the generosity of giving Dharma. And so that's generosity. And then while one is teaching the Dharma, one teaches the Dharma with good intention, without hoping for any kind of return or kind of reputation and being worshipped and praised and so forth. Without any of that, if one teaches the Dharma in this way, that is the parameter of ethical discipline. And then also while one teaches the Dharma, if one is able to endure, persevere through various difficulties that are involved in teaching the Dharma, and one practices patience, and that's the parameter of patience.
드니 치시비 값을 레로당 서쇼미 비고니 치시바데 에는 손리지 바로 들어봐래. 강시지기 치대다 탐지기 돈리 진 생라 메인 치대 코시지 치대 그가 랑라로 떼니 시바데 에는 삼딘지 바로 들어봐. 에는 시지 치대니 시비 값은 코산 넘버를 못도 찌슴버 제지대 에는 시럽게 바로 들어봐. 대따로 에는 그런 다다 치시지가 에는 상그레스.
And so then, when one teaches the Dharma, if one teaches the Dharma without laziness or procrastination, it is the parameter of diligence. And then while one teaches the Dharma, if the mind is undistracted and completely focused on each of the words in the present moment, that's the parameter of meditation. And then when one teaches the Dharma, if one remains in a state of non-conceptuality, state that is free from the 3 spheres, then one also practices the parameter of wisdom. So in this way, through teaching the Dharma, for example, one simultaneously practices the 6 parameters.
다 들린데 지게 짐바 바로 조바야나 드가롱리 조바 존리 삼티 데다 탐탄 도나 바로 츠바레데 냠스데미 값사 도가 냠들 참고 요레스.
And the same is true for example, the parameter of patience or diligence or meditation, whichever of the 6 parameters you practice, the other parameters are complete within this practice.
Oh yeah, any time drink up papala. That garon inda. Garon samja jiwa ta ti cho chong de gendo. Any day ma in the channel naron samja chi.
So now the time has come, so we will stop the teachings here for today.